Hi there everyone, and welcome to a first for Red Gaming Tech. This is going to be the start of a new related series of videos from this point on, and today we're going to be having the top 5 Silent Hill enemies and what they represent within the games they first appeared in. Obviously some of these enemies have multiple appearances, so yes, we're just going to be talking about the original game. As this is a top 5, I will be starting from number 5 obviously and working my way up to number 1 with some explanations as to the symbolism behind it. Obviously with anything like that it's all down to opinion and interpretation, but I'm going to be giving you the common consensus as to what these monsters actually symbolise. The first on our list at number 5 is the Closer, which first appeared in Silent Hill 3. It is, however, closely linked to the Mandarin from Silent Hill 2 in terms of its appearance. The Closer is thought to be a manifestation of Alessa Gillespie's memories of her mother's abuse, hence its rather large punching bag-like arms. The name is derived from the ability to basically completely block your way with its huge body. As I said, it looks almost identical to the Mandarin from Silent Hill 2, with also possible connections to overwhelming inescapable fear, because as I said, these monsters are very large and tend to block your path and completely get in your way as much as possible. Before I continue, just as a small warning, there are going to be some spoilers in some of these monster explanations, so if you haven't played any of the games mentioned, please do keep that in mind. But the Closer is also supposedly related to the running theme of maternity and femininity in Silent Hill 3, and many of the monsters in that game relate to that due to the central theme being the impregnation of Heather in order to give birth to the cult's god. The Closer's face, which you should be able to see in the images on screen, can be thought to look like a labia, which also correlates with this theme. There are a few theories floating around as to what this monster could mean, but it seems to be that these are the main ones, but it could also be that this is a distorted interpretation of real people. As the monster first appears in a shopping mall, it could in fact be a representation of the mall shoppers. It could argue that it's reminiscent of a figure holding a shopping bag in each hand. So as I said before, a lot of these are theories, but it's interesting nonetheless to see what the symbolism behind them could be. Personally, I think the fear and abuse ones are the closest, because to me the Closer's head always looked a little bit like a hammer as well, and obviously you've got the huge arms which it used to basically club you with, completely block your way, and just basically be rather annoying. Next up at number 4 is the Grey Child, which first appeared in Silent Hill 1, and as far as I'm aware has not had any similar appearances in any of the other games. The symbolism for the Grey Children is fairly simple, especially when you compare it to some of the other monsters in the Silent Hill franchise and most of the other monsters on my little list here. They are pretty clearly the perception of Alessa Gillespie's classmates, as they tormented and ridiculed her before she was basically tortured. So obviously she's not exactly going to view her fellow school children as happy pink bunnies offering flowers. So they have a rather disturbing, hunched over experience and look kind of Gollum-like basically, and they basically come at you with a knife and are actually quite annoying to deal with because of their small size. They are a fan of grabbing you and basically just never leaving you alone. But as I said, they most prominently appear in the Midwich Elementary School for obvious reasons, due to the pretty clear symbolism of them being the actual school children that were once in their place. Next up at number 3 is a fan favourite of the series, the Bubblehead Nurse. The symbolism of these particular monsters is pretty much agreed upon by most people who have played the hell out of Silent Hill 2, like myself. And like all enemies within the game, they are manifested by everything within James Sunderland's mind. That's obviously the main character, and they combine not only his anxiety surrounding his wife's terminal illness, but also his frustrated libido and sexual desires, hence why the Bubblehead Nurses are always seen wearing very risque clothing with the very prominent cleavage, shall we say. I mean, when I played Silent Hill 2, the symbolism that came through most clearly to me was the sexual desires and frustration coming from James, because obviously they're dressed up very provocatively. But there's also another theoried symbolism about these nurses. As most of you know, the Bubblehead Nurses from Silent Hill 2, unlike the demon nurses from Silent Hill 3, obviously basically have almost completely obscured faces, and they are almost completely covered in gauze, and you only really see a little bit of their eyes and teeth basically. And this lack of features could represent James's unsure feelings about Maria, as they are first encountered shortly after he meets her, but they could also be linked to Mary's, that's his wife's, illness. So, as I said, the clearest one is the sexual thing, but it could also be linked to those two characters, as I said. So, it was, again, an interesting symbolism for these characters. The Bubblehead Nurses are pretty much one of the coolest enemies from Silent Hill 2, but I also actually quite like the Demon Nurses from Silent Hill 3, who do look rather different in comparison to these. And coming in at number 2 is Memory of Alessa, who is actually a boss character from Silent Hill 3. Although she is a boss rather than a standard run-of-the-mill enemy, I still think Alessa here deserves a place in my top 5, because not only is she one of the coolest enemies in Silent Hill 3, I think she's one of the coolest enemies in the franchise as a whole, and is only topped by the one just above her. The symbolism for Memory of Alessa is pretty clear, at least in my opinion, as she is pretty much the exact doppelganger of Heather, except very burnt and destroyed looking, and obviously the evil interpretation of her. Basically, it's the imprint of Alessa left in the other world by her powers and mind. It is a manifestation of Alessa's desires, which is one that, above all else, wants to stop God's birth and to spare the world from the event should it occur, because obviously the storyline of Silent Hill 3 is that the cult wants you to give birth to God, and obviously the vestiges of Alessa left within Heather does not want that to happen. This becomes very, very clear when she leaves Heather a message written in blood on the carousel floor, basically saying that it'd be better for myself to die than that God or child being born. But Heather does not agree, and obviously they end up having an epic battle to the death, but this is only Alessa's desire to stop the birth of God rather than anything against Heather, because obviously Heather and Alessa are exactly the same person. Personally, Memory of Alessa looks pretty damn cool, and is actually something that I've considered cosplaying a few times actually, and I probably will do it eventually. The only challenge of that, of course, is the burnt looking skin, because she's pretty much very mangled and destroyed looking. She's a pretty damn cool boss fight happening on a deformed carousel, and you can't really get much messed up than that, really, can you? And finally, coming in at number 1, I'm sure you all have guessed who my number 1 Silent Hill enemy is going to be. It is, of course, the one and only Pyramid Head, who again is a boss character, but he actually appears quite a few times in Silent Hill 2, and you actually only properly fight him a couple of times compared to the amount of times that you actually see and experience what he gets up to. He is without a doubt one of the coolest characters in the Silent Hill series, and has appeared in many games and many terrible films, but the one where he first appeared, and his only real true appearance, at least in my opinion, is Silent Hill 2. Pyramid Head encompasses a lot of James's thoughts and feelings. He is an embodiment of a lot of stuff, so let's just jump straight into this massive list, shall we? The first and most prominent is he is a manifestation of James's unfulfilled desire for punishment and guilt for the death of Mary Shepherd Sunderland, which is of course his wife. That is his clearest symbolism, at least to me. He is there to punish James for what he did to his wife, and it is pure manifestation of guilt. But he is also there as a representation of James's sexual frustration, which is why Pyramid Head carries the phallic symbol of the giant great big sword that he has, and is often seen, you know, stabbing other monsters with it, and is obviously well known for his love of rape. So it's pretty clear that Pyramid Head is also a representation of his sexual frustration, which is obviously a strong theme in Silent Hill 2, with the Bubblehead Nurses also performing a representation of this feeling. Pyramid Head also attacks the character Maria, who is obviously another manifestation of James's wife, and the reason that Pyramid Head does this, or the reason that is speculated, should I say, is that he is there to remind James that he killed Mary. Maria is a distraction to keep James away from the fact that he murdered his wife, and Pyramid Head attacks her and murders her multiple times to basically remind James of that fact and that you cannot escape from what you have done. He constantly pursues you throughout the game, and his one task is to lead you down the path to the truth, which is why he actually opens up the path for you a couple of times. The most obvious being, of course, when he pushes James off the roof at Brookhaven Hospital and into the special treatment area. So obviously he wants James to face the truth and come to terms with what he's done. That is his purpose. What's also interesting, though, is at the end of the game there are two Pyramid Heads, and I always personally thought that the second Pyramid Head is the manifestation of the guilt for the murder of Eddie Dombrowski, which is another character that you end up fighting as a boss. That is personally what I always took it as, because he appears not long after the rather annoying boss fight with Eddie. Other fans have argued that it's nothing to do with Eddie, but rather to do with Maria's death. Personally, I think it's to do with Eddie, because as I said, he appears just after you fight him, whereas Maria was in the game long before that. But obviously it's all down to opinion and interpretation, as I said during the start of the video. Anyway guys, that's me done for this top 5 video. I hope you found it entertaining and interesting. There'll be more of these kind of videos coming your way very soon. This is just the start of a related series of videos, so I hope you've enjoyed. Please do hit me up with any comments and suggestions for improving the series. I'd very much like to hear from you guys, and I'll see you again soon.